the West Philippine Sea, and of course, because of the recent development, I'm including the Benham rice, now known as Philippine rice. The title of my presentation is "The Philippines," and this is my thesis, faces a security challenge in two fronts: Benham rice in the east and Scarborough Shoal in the west. And I'd like to start by saying that many of my inputs here came from briefings I got from the Japan Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They were kind enough to invite me and gave me a presentation on their concerns about the South China Sea. They're very concerned about the situation here. This was last February. And also, my meetings with the Vietnam Center for Strategic Studies and International Development, and the other one is the Institute for Southeast Asian Studies of Vietnam, where I had a meeting with them last April on their invitation. They're also very concerned about what's happening in the South China Sea. They're part of the South China Sea, and they're very concerned about our position. And then also, I attended a series of meetings with the Japan Institute for International Policy Studies, or IIPS, starting in 2015, and many of the points I'm citing here were points that were discussed in those meetings. And it was in one of the meetings in Japan where I had the opportunity to meet a very prominent former Prime Minister of Japan, Nakasone. And also, in my last trip to Japan, I called on a very prominent staff member, a key advisor of Prime Minister Abe of Japan, Mr. Kawai. He's a member of Parliament, and we became friends before the election of our incumbent President Duterte, and he's the point man of Prime Minister Abe as far as interacting with the Philippines is concerned. That's him. Of course, that's a president, that's Prime Minister Abe. And I called in his office. This is him meeting with the president. And I visited his office in Tokyo. And when the Izumo, the big warship of Japan, visited Subic, and when the president visited in the Izumo, it was Mr. Kawai. Mr. Kawai, who received the president during the president's visit, and he inspected the Japanese warship. Now I'd like to talk about the Philippines facing a security challenge in two fronts. First is the security challenge in the West. And I'd like to say that my interest in the West Philippine Sea goes back many years. In 1971, I was part of the secret mission that visited our islands in the Spratlys area, at that time known as Freedom Land. I was part of the group that landed and transported troops, equipment, and supplies to the islands that we had there. And of course, after that, many years after, I became involved again, at that time already a member of the House of Representatives, when we discovered that China constructed an installation on Mischief Reef. This is the makeshift looking structure that they have. And when we complained, they said, don't worry about it, it's only temporary for the shelter of our fishermen. A few years after, this was 1999, on the information that I received, I boarded a C-130 flight together with the U.S. Congressman Roilo Golez and flew over Mischief Reef and discovered for ourselves, and this was the first time that it was announced that China was constructing something bigger, and this is what they finished after. This was the original, I'm sorry, there's something very wrong with our technical situation here. Siguro, anyway, you're facing two, no? Doon na lang kayo to begin. Huwag na rito, medyo erratic ito eh. I noticed na yung dalawa medyo okay. So, after seeing for myself the situation on Mischief Reef, I delivered a privileged speech in 1999, and with the little that I know about naval strategy, about sea lines of communications, I could see already a pattern of the movement of China in the South China Sea, and I made a declaration and I said, 1999, that Scarborough Shoal is the objective of China, that it is part of China's military projection in the South China Sea. And when I said that, a lot of people said that I was being an alarmist. Well, 2012, the fear became a reality because China seized Scarborough Shoal in 2012. Now, they appear to have some plans that they would like to build on Scarborough Shoal. There was an intelligence finding that China would like to build an environmental monitoring station on Panatag, the other name of Scarborough Shoal. It is also called Bajo de Masinloc. Of course, they denied this. In a hearing in the U.S. Senate, a former commander-in-chief of the Pacific Command, Admiral Dennis Blair, also made a statement saying that the Scarborough Shoal should be a red line. In other words, it is so strategic that the U.S. should not allow any construction on Scarborough Shoal to be conducted or implemented by China. And that's the reason why I also made a statement that the Philippines should strongly protest the plan of China to build an environmental station. You know, an environmental station, a weather station, might sound very harmless, but when we're talking of Doppler radar, I think we are all aware, those who are technologically inclined here are well aware that a Doppler radar, a weather radar, can be used to monitor the weather and also to monitor other flying objects to the detriment of our national security. And in fact, it is our duty also to protect Scarborough Shoal, because under Republic Act 9522, and I had the privilege of being one of the principal authors. In fact, I was the chairman of the technical working group that crafted this law. The Philippine Archipelagic Baselines Law states that the Kalayaan Island Group, Spratlys, Pag-asa, Parola, and Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc is part of Philippine territory. And therefore, being part of Philippine territory is a duty of the government to protect that part of Philippine territory. Now, what is the strategic significance of Scarborough Shoal? Some people might dismiss Scarborough Shoal as just some rocks in the middle of nowhere. But as you can see from the map there, Scarborough Shoal is very close to Zambales. It is about 219 kilometers from Zambales, maybe about 130 nautical miles. And if you look at Scarborough Shoal, some people treat it as a speck in the middle of nowhere. But this is the master plan that we have found out. We have found out some documents that this appears to be the master plan of China when if they would be allowed to construct on Scarborough Shoal. And you can see from the structures there that there's a runway, a 3-kilometer runway. There are a number of buildings. They would like to convert the lagoon inside. It's a navigable lagoon, very big, with a natural channel, so ships can go in to the lagoon. They would like to have some power facilities, building facilities, and some tourism, civilian facilities. And you know, there's a strategy here, because normally China, in developing their artificial islands in the South China Sea, they mix civilian facilities with facilities that can be converted into military facilities. And what is the reason for this? Because they will make a statement, don't worry about this, this is primarily for civilian purposes. Just like the runway in Naiya, that is primarily for civilian purposes, but the Villamor Air Base can use the runway there for military purposes, and that is exactly what I believe they plan to do. It's also not small, so it has a huge potential to become a naval base as well as an air base. I'd like to say, if you're not aware, that the lagoon inside is almost as big as Quezon City. You are all familiar with Quezon City. Imagine a lagoon as big as Quezon City. From the welcome sign, you traverse Quezon Boulevard, go to Commonwealth Avenue, pass by the Batasan, then turns toward Fairview, then Novaliches, then back to Cubao. That is how big the lagoon in Scarborough Shoal is. Well, the other important thing is that we are talking about the objective of China, which is to achieve what we call the strategic triangle. Strategic triangle. I think every time I switch, it namamatay. I've been lecturing in the NDCP for years already. I'm sorry to say this is my first time to encounter this. Maybe again, special to the 23rd executive course. Then, talking about the strategic triangle. The strategic triangle as a term, I first encountered this during my first think tank meeting in Japan in January 2015. And the speaker, one of the speakers, I was a speaker there, and one of the speakers there was Admiral Koda, who happens to be a former chief of the Navy of Japan. And he was the one who first mentioned the term strategic triangle. So what is the strategic triangle? The strategic triangle is a 3-point triangle, and the first point is already there. This is in the Paracels, Woody Island. They have a runway, they've been operating this runway there. And the second point is almost finished. And this is the cluster of artificial islands, Mischief Reef inside our exclusive economic zone. And then Fiery Cross Reef and Subic, which is very near our Pacasa, plus a number of other, I'll mention them. So this is, that's the strategic triangle, and a close-up, this will be the close-up, and you can see that it is almost an equilateral triangle. And if they succeed in making this and making it militarily operational, they will have full control of the South China Sea, because all those points, the master plan will have runways and will have a naval and military base. In fact, they succeed in positioning some fighter jets there. A fighter jet with a 1,000-mile radius will cover the entire Philippines, the entire Vietnam, all of Borneo, and part of Malaysia. So you can see the enormous coverage that it will have. It will have full control of the South China Sea. Well, of course, they denied that they wanted to install a monitoring station